It's always my ambition to be a trainer. Usually you do what your dad did, and he was quite good at it, and I said I'd give it a go.
It's Mamoon and Chris Hayes lengthening away from in second place Broome and then Massaf. Mamoon, 2 starts at the track, both result and wins.
7 decades Kevin Prendergast is training winners.
Well, winners.
But running up towards the finish, it's O'Tad in the colours of Hamden Al Maktoum for Kevin Prendergast wins the Tattersalls Irish 2,000 guineas in great style.
The race up towards the line, Oscar Schindler striding up to the line. A first Irish Group 1 success for Stephen Crane, who touches the air in delight.
To hit the front is Mad Moon, and Chris Hayes drawing on Zuluun from the back, but Mad Moon books his Champion Stakes ticket for here in 4 weeks' time.
The one thing about training races, it gets you out of bed in the morning, and if you have a real horse, you get out an hour early.
It's Brad Brever, he's dying in the closing stages, but they're coming out of Maladetto. Festive cheer on the near side, but Brad Brever has held on.
As they race towards the final 100 yards, and it's O'Tad out in front, in at the moment, Custom Cut out of look at Royal Ascot and Glorious Goodwood. O'Tad wins the Boomerang Stakes for Chris Hayes and Kevin Prendergast.
I enjoyed every bit of it.
How would you like your legacy to be remembered as?
A fella that told mostly the truth.
Kevin, thanks for having myself and Fran here this afternoon.
You're very welcome.
7 decades Kevin Prendergast is training winners.
Well, winners.
Kevin, it all started, you were born in 1932 in Australia.
Things were very bad in Ireland in those days, from the 30s. And he got a job in Melbourne, Caulfield. And he took it, and they went on their honeymoon there, and I was born there. So, and he stayed there. Things weren't much better there, so he came back to Ireland then, and I was only, I think, a couple of years old.
And was Darkie, your dad, training in Australia?
No, he was riding. He was a jockey. He had a jockey's licence, yeah.
I never knew that.
He said very poorly. He actually broke his neck. He had a broken neck, and that's he gave it up then.
And when he came back, Kevin, was the Rap Ride here, was Ross Moore here?
No, he actually went to Palmerstown.
Alongside where Goffs is now?
Where Mr. Comer owns now at the moment.
Yes.
He went there to work for W.J. Kelly, who was had shops in Dublin, hardware shops in Dublin. And he owned Palmerstown at the time. And he was interested in horses, and he had quite some horses in Palmerstown. And Father trained them for him there in Palmerstown.
So that's where the training career of Darkie Prendergast
That's
started?
how he started off, actually, in Palmerstown. But he didn't, I'm not so sure whether he had a licence then or not.
Because back in those days, it was the owner a lot of the time
Exactly.
had the licence, wasn't it?
Exactly. W.J. Kelly was the man. And he worked there. Then he went to Rossmore, I think, in 38.
And Rossmore, did he develop Rossmore himself?
Rossmore was there, and the 5 jockeys owned it, the Doyles. Joe Doyle. And he had 5 sons, and they were all jockeys. And Father bought Rossmore with a man called Manny Henry, I think in 1939, 40. And he went from there. One of the first horses he had was a horse called Pelorus, who was a very good horse. They bought him off Bertie Carr, I think at the time, for 200 guineas.
Which is a lot of money back then.
Which was a lot of money, probably a lot of money back then, you know.
Did your father ride a lot of winners on the flat? Or was it a long career on the flat?
He always admitted that he was a very poor jockey. But his brother, Mick, he was the leading jockey in the north of England, and he rode an Irish national winner called Alice Baythorn for Joe Osborne.
That was the thing at the time, and continued all the way through to what, 1980s dual-purpose jockeys. Most jockeys rode flat
That's right.
and jumps.
Aubrey Brabazon rode as many winners on the flat as he did over jumps. And he was famous for riding, I think, Hatton's Race and Cottage Rake.
Martin Maloney.
Martin Maloney rode a winner of the Irish 1,000 guineas for my father. A mare called Princess Trudy for a man called Mr. Dick McElhaga, who was he was the first to come in with razor blades in Ireland. They called them Max Smile.
Did it work?
They did work, actually. I don't know about the smile, but the Max worked.
We're all now using Mac razors in this day and age.
We're all using Max Smile.
And
Oh, there was another one called Cutthroat. I don't think he was into that. Cutthroat razor. I don't think they were into that.
No, definitely not. Prendergast, originally from Kildare?
No, Carlo.
Carlo, right.
Yeah, my grandfather was from Carlo.
Your dad, he was ahead of his time. Champion trainer in England, 1963, 1964 and 1965. Phenomenal in those days. Phenomenal
Well, in
nowadays,
those
but
days,
phenomenal
they
in
had to
those days.
travel by boat and by broken down floats, and what are you going to get there or bust? You know, now they get on an aeroplane and fly straight into the meeting. And what do you get? If there's a sweating one, we start to cry.
And just tell us what your, back in those days, how long it used to take to get to England and what you used to have to endure going to there.
Basically, you left in the morning and probably went to Liverpool. Then you had to take, what do you got, get a horse box and drive over most of it from Liverpool. You know, that was the start. You had to drive from Liverpool to Ascot, from Liverpool to Goodwood, York, Doncaster, you know.
When you're doing that trip, would you do it in one go, the lorry, or would you take the horse out to stretch your legs? Or
What they do, they had stalls on those days on the boats.
Right.
So they put the horse box on, you brought them there, and then they put them on the boat.
Like an airplane now.
Yeah,
like pallets
exactly,
in an
had-
airplane.
So,
And a lot of horses back in those days used to travel by train as well around the country in
a
Ireland.
great
and
story about, what do you call it, Dick Goff. He had a mare called Penny on the Jack. And Penny on the Jack, anyway, she always had, when he put her on the train and be heading for Limerick Junction, you know, and he'd have a couple of sacks tied on the back. So what he'd do, she'd had to stay overnight, and most of the horses wouldn't eat anyway, so he'd go down, collect the waste and hang it on the mare coming home. Danny Goff.
Try to save a few quid.
She was a good mare, Penny on the Jack. I think she won the Cesarewitch. She was a very good mare.
And your father, Darkie, he used to target the likes of Chester, Royal Ascot and York, wasn't it?
York, Doncaster, yeah. Yeah, he was very successful at that.
And to be champion trainer in England in 3 years in succession, without winning the Derby, which is obviously the most valuable race each season, that was an achievement in itself, wasn't it?
You had to win sort of most of the good races at the major meetings to do that, you know. So, which he did.
how many horses would you had in training, numbers-wise?
The majority of horses, he never had more than 80 horses. 80 was the top. 75, 60, 65. That was it.
I know from talking to people, my dad in particular, he's great memories of your dad. He was way ahead of his time. He used to bring American quarter horse over to lead out the horse onto the gallops.
He had a very good owner called Mrs. Parker Poe, who was from Virginia, and they were very much into quarter horses in America at the time. But one got sore or something like that, or was a little bit gone off on the track. They used them as riding horses, so he was very lucky. We got some very good riding horses, which were quarter horses, as lead horses, you know, lead ponies.
And I was only to get the racehorse out to the
They're
gallops.
great for the fillies, for lead, awkward filly or something. These fellas would go anywhere, you know, because they've been used to being trained on the track, and they'd go anywhere. So the fillies would go with them, just lead them off them.
There'd be no rider with the horse. There'd be one rider on the quarter horse, and they'd be leading 2 or 3 horses.
No,
would they?
you can only just lead the one, nothing on
Okay.
them. Just lead the filly. In those days, there was one man to 2 horses. Now there's one horse to 20, one man to 20.
And the roads were a lot quieter as well in the Curragh.
You could go around Dunmurry here, and what do you guys, if you saw an ass and cart, you were lucky. You know, you'd see nobody.
And as you say, your dad, he was very particular. He'd a well organised team, and he had feed man who concentrated on just feeding the horses. Had you a farrier that was worked?
We had our own farrier, own feed man, and we had what do you got in the early days, Tom Fitzgerald, who was a great leg man, and everything was done, and every horse had to be tied up at 4 o'clock, and the parade was at 5. You looked at the horse at 5. The horses were all platted. The doors were platted. The kit was up, and you showed your horse.
And platted now mean straw was platted.
Straw was platted.
What was the idea behind that?
It was very, very tight. It didn't look very well, and there were good stablemen in those days. Now, if you asked a fella to put down a plat, he'd think it was curling his hair.
Had Darkie a forge in Rossmore?
Yeah, there was forge. All the horses were shod hot.
What was the reason behind shoeing them hot?
Well, I don't know. The old days people always had their horses shod hot. The shoe sort of sat in better, fitted. Now they just pare it off and stick the shoe on. But the shoe sort of wore in, and the shoes were sort of quite warm when they put them in. They put them in the water, cooled them off, and then put them on.
And your dad, of course, did 3 championships in England, but what was his first breakout horse? What was his first really good horse to really...
First good horse he had was Polaris. And then he had quite a good few national... I think he won... I think he was nearly leading jump there one year. You know, he had quite a good few jumpers. B. Prude, Rosemarin, Lindell Mount. I think he might have sold Lindell Mount to Vincent. I think he might have. He sold a couple of good horses to Vincent, jumping horses.
Because you always associate Darkie Prendergast as a flat trainer, don't you?
Oh, he had a very good horse called Finn Noor. Spur Nolan. He won the Cesarewitch on him, and Lord Bister bought him in England, and he was practically a Gold Cup horse. Very good horse. Finn Noor.
Owners nowadays, there's a lot of Arab influence, obviously, but back then there was a lot of American owners. Then was there wealthy Irish landowners as such? Were they the mainstay of the
A lot
team?
of breeders and what do you call it, and Anglo-Irish were very good at the time. Frankie Moore, he was very well. He knew an awful lot of Americans and used to travel quite a bit. And we had sort of like Bing Crosby, Frank McMahon, Judy Garland, a lot of actors and actresses.
And what kind of a man was Bing Crosby? Because he was a superstar of his time.
I met him. What do you call it? Myself and a fella, Dr. Morrissey, Paddy Morrissey, who was a very good character, and we went to see Gladness running the Arc de Triomphe. And needless to say, we thought she was a certainty. Everybody thought a certainty, and of course, we didn't have our fare home. We're coming out, so I met Mr. Crosby on the way out, and Morrissey says to me, "Go over and ask them there for 100 to get us home." You see. So I went over and I said, "Mr. Crosby," I told him our story that we're after losing. Any chance? "I don't loan money," he says.
That was that answer.
That was the end of that.
How did you get home?
We met a couple of nice girls.
Medacourt won the Derby, Ragusa won the Derby, the Noblesse, of course, English Oaks by 15 lengths back in 1962?
Yeah, she was a very good mare. She belonged to a fella called John Olin, who was, I think, was the chairman of the New York Jockey Club. And I think the destiny of Judmont comes from Noblesse. I think he bought her off John Olin, early days. And if you look back, Noblesse was part of the stud there.
Communication back then, you're dealing with owners in America, not like now. Like, was it phone calls, letters? How did you keep them updated on the horse?
It was, what do you call it? It was like, you have to ring the bell, sort of, what do you call it?
Book a call.
and listen, and so if you answered, you could speak, but you were very lucky to get a phone call. And then there was the exchange. Did you know about the exchanges? Yeah. They had the exchange. I think Miko and Jack Doyle had a fella in the exchange in Nace.
Nick O'Toole.
Yeah, at what do you call it? And they could get cheap calls after 12 o'clock.
Mick always had an angle. Didn't he?
Nico was great.
Kevin Ballymore, am I right saying your father trained him to win a 2,000 guineas first time out?
He never ran in his life. That was his first one.
That was some achievement.
Yeah, he never ran in his life. He was, I think he was out of Paddy's sister. She was unbeaten as a 2-year-old. And the funny thing about it, I was in Rossmore at the time, and Dad said to me, she's going to run in the Queen Mary. And he said, who do you think? Well, I said, George Moore, I know him from being in Australia. I knew George at the track when I was with Frank Dalton. So I'd give him a ring and what do you call it? And Moore said I'd be delighted to get her. And I can't tell you what he promised me, but anyway, he's in heaven and I'm still waiting.
Did you think Ballymore would win the Guineas?
He was fairly, well, it wasn't a big price now. When you know, for a horse having his first run, he should have been 100 to 1, but I don't think he was.
And going there, what kind of preparation? How do you tune a horse up to win a Guineas first?
Well, in
time?
those days, he had a place called Clonmannon in Wicklow there, and Chester Beatty owned it. Sir Chester Beatty. He was, I think some famous fella in Dublin robbed all these paintings one time.
Might be a movie about that, I think.
We've all seen it.
But anyway, he had a beautiful gallops there right across this, on top of the sea, you know, or on top of the coast. There was 7 furlongs in a mile and a quarter. Beautiful.
So this is alongside Rusborough House, obviously.
Yeah. And we used to, when the horses broke up there, we could bring them to Portmarnock, had boxes in Portmarnock, and always, if there was frost there, we could bring them there, stable them in Portmarnock and walk them along the beach.
And leave them there for a week or something,
yeah,
maybe?
Leave them there for a month, 6 weeks.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Same in Clonmannon.
You went to Australia at 18 years of age. You were educated at Newbridge College in Rockwell, am I right saying that?
I went to Newbridge first. I got a junior medal ran up in the cup, and I got a senior medal in Rockwell.
In rugby?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were a very good rugby player.
Well, I played.
I'd hate to see him coming at me with a rugby, but I'd just drop it going, there you go, Kevin, I'm out here.
You can have it.
I played. I wasn't putting delivering the oranges at half time. I was playing.
How good were you at school? Did you tune into your lessons?
Poorly.
Poorly.
And that time you couldn't pass your leaving unless you had Irish. You had to go, you could get all the subjects in the world, but if you didn't pass Irish, they wouldn't give you the leaving cert.
Really?
Oh yeah. And you had to do the matriculation to get your leaving then after that. So it was another exam the following year. So I just thought that the shortest way home was Australia.
So you go to Randwick, Frank Dalton.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get to Australia in those days?
Well, I think it was about a day to get from Heathrow to about 8 hours, 10 hours to get to Singapore, and then another 10 hours on.
Okay.
About 24 to 25 hours.
Similar to what
nearly
it is today.
similar today.
Yeah.
You know. But when I was coming back, it was on the Moreton Bay, and it took 6 weeks. There was strikes everywhere. In 1954, what they got, Tersper was in everywhere.
5 years in Australia, am I right saying that, with Frank Dalton?
Yeah.
When you went there, was it to get an education as a trainer, or were you going there to live for a while?
I went there, what do you call it, as a job, working for Frank Dalton from the bottom. And I was there about 12 months, and I was the foreman in it. And we had a very, very good time for 4 years while I was there. He was my age nearly when I got there. He was an old man, but a nice man, gentleman.
How influential was Frank Dalton on your career?
He was very good. He's a very, very nice man, and but he was full of detail. Everything was done to the last. And he only had ever 25, 30 horses, no more. His brother was a priest, and he was very, what do you call it, you have to do this and you have to do that. You know, he wasn't a, I wouldn't say, as they say in Australia, he wasn't a larrikin.
As you go from the Curragh wide open place, was Australia like it is now, training on the tracks?
All training on the track then. We had to walk to the track in the morning. We used to have to pull out 4. And before the traffic came, and we get down, and we had to go the main road really. The traffic would be just getting warm. We'd work then from 4 o'clock till 9. Then it was closed up, went back at 2, and you rode them back to the track for an hour walking. Then you come back and head up and fed up at 7 o'clock. And the rest of your day was your own.
Do you ever think about training in Australia?
I had a licence for about 6 or 8 months.
Oh, did you? In Australia, right.
Yeah. And Jack Thompson were riding a horse called Holbrook. We brought him to a place called Musselbrook. And anyway, we had a fellow, Dr. Gates, and a couple of fellas, they all got stuck into him, and he got beat ahead. I came back and all the tack was gone, and the rugs off the horses. So I said, I'm off.
That was Australia.
That's it, that was it.
It was probably a blessing in disguise.
Well, I don't know, it probably was. I actually had a job, got Japan, off the Japanese government at the time. My old boss got it. He was very friendly with this fella who's an Australian agent in, and I had the job, and I said I'd come home first, see what it was like. And anyway, I'm here still.
And there was a chance of you going to
go to Japan. Japan was only starting then.
Okay.
Yeah.
What they wanted, European horsemen or people
That's
with
it,
experience?
yeah.
So you come back here to Ireland to assist your dad, Darkie.
That's it, yeah.
You rode a lot of winners as an amateur.
I rode a good few, yeah. I wouldn't know how many, but a few.
And being an amateur in them days, obviously bumpers every day, big amateur races.
There were big betting races on the meeting on the day, the bumpers. And they had, Bunny Cox used to ride most of the favourites in those days. He was riding for Dan Moore, and he rode for everybody. And I rode quite a few winners for Lord Fingal. And I remember I was riding a horse for him at the park one day. He's called Jem Mason. He called him after a friend of his. I think Jem Mason won the English National I can't think of the name of the horse anyway, but Jem Mason, he named the horse after him. And I had been riding work for Danny Morgan. And anyway, Danny Morgan says to me, is this horse any good? I said, I think he's a very good horse. He says, well, I have him in at the park and you ride him. That's grand. So I went to the park anyway. And into the ring anyway, and Lord Fingal, a lovely man, he comes over and said to me, Kevin, he says, I've sponsored a flat race, the first flat race that will ever be run in Fairyhouse, and it's for maidens only. I finished 5th, and I remember Mr. Boyser coming and said, he grabbed me, he says, I have you this time. And I just said, would you have a look who the senior steward is today? And he looked anyway, he saw that he owned Jem Mason's horse and I was after riding.
You were okay.
So, needless to say, he went to Fairyhouse and he won accordingly.
Yeah.
You can record that because it's there in black and white. And I beat my good friend Bunny Cox on a very good mare called 4 Aces.
Nice.
And unfortunately the horse got badly hurt schooling about a month later in Danny Morgan's.
And Fairs never had flat racing until then. It was Banks, did Irish Grand National.
I rode in a hurdle race for Paddy Mullins one day, a mare called 4 Class, who's the dam of 4 Tria. And Mullins asked me to ride her. And anyway, she finished 3rd anyway. And there was a picture of her jumping the last hurdle. And father sees it, of course. His brother was killed in Punchestown. He was 18, Kevin, in the point-to-point of a mare called Blackwood Cross. for a fella called Joe Marr. Joe Marr was Bapty's brother, and Bapty was married to Kevin Barry's sister.
Right.
And
Kevin Barry of the famous Kevin Barry.
that's it. That's it. And he just said to me, if you ever do that again, he said, you won't be around here. You'll get the sack. That's a true story.
Really? So you learned your lesson that day?
Yeah. But then against that, he didn't mind when he wanted one schooled, he didn't mind putting me on to school one.
How rough and ready was riding back then, or was it like a survival of the fittest, tough tracks?
Well,
tough jockeys?
I remember being in the maze one day, and a lovely man called Major Scott. They said, now, the fanciest ones in front and the ones that are not fancied out the back. There was 40 runners around the maze.
41
There was no restriction on the many runners.
Really?
Not at all. No, but there wasn't as many trainers in those days, and so a big field was unusual, you know.
Yeah.
Jockey-wise, good amateurs rode. You mentioned Bunny Cox. He was
What the Francis Flood and Lillington probably was as good as ever. Anybody? Alan Lillington. He was a very good rider.
really.
Yeah, he rode Winning Fair to win the champion hurdle. But for a big man, he sat very, very close to. His breast was on the pommel of the saddle.
Really?
Yeah.
And of course, Winning Fair was trained by Jamie Spencer's dad.
Yeah, trained by Jerry Spencer's dad. Yeah. One-eyed.
Really?
Yeah, one eye.
Dermot Weld, you'd have ridden with Dermot Weld as well.
Yeah, he was a very good rider. Very good. Brilliant. Very good rider. Very good
I wouldn't
rider.
like to try to get up Kevin Prendergast in her, Fran, would you?
Any run-ins with Dermot?
I
along
rode
the way?
with Ted.
Ted.
Ted, yeah. Ted got a race off me in Leopardstown one day. I was giving him a bit of a squeeze on the home turn. And Mr. O'Toole was second. He was riding for O'Toole. So anyway.
Kieran.
No,
Mick.
Mick.
Oh, sorry, Mako, yeah.
And anyway, Mick went in shouting and roaring and what they got. And of course, his daughter, one of the senior stewards' daughter was riding out in Wales at the time. So, que sera, that was it.
Did you enjoy the riding side of it?
I did, I loved it, yeah.
First licence, 1963.
That's right.
You had your first winner at the Phoenix Park that year with Zara.
Rode it myself.
Did you?
Yeah.
So your first winner was in a bumper?
First winners in the bumper, rode it myself for Michael Sheehan, the Lord Mayor of Cork, and John A. Woods, who was, I was saying, a big shareholder in Roadstone at the time. They owned them. And George Dunwoody came back from Cheltenham after being third in the Broadway Novices Hurdle, which was one of the best hurdle races at the meeting. He was either second or third, but at that time you could run back in a bumper. And he opened 6-4, but he didn't finish favourite. My fella finished favourite, and I won accordingly. But George Dunwoody's father rode him, George Dunwoody.
Yeah, and of course he was transpired to be Richard Dunwoody's father.
Richard Dunwoody's father, yeah.
Yeah, George. When you started training, where did you actually start training? Did you start training in
Down the
Friarstown?
road here. Just down the road there where Pat O'Leary is now.
Ah, okay, next door neighbour to you.
Yeah, there was 10 broken down boxes, and we got them done up. And we trained out there. We only had 2 horses. We used to ride them out twice a day. On we had 4.
And you were still working for Darkie at the time?
No.
Oh, were you not?
We departed company.
Right. Go on, elaborate a little bit more.
That's a long story.
We've plenty of time.
Or no rush at all.
But
how hard was it to go out on your own then?
Very, very difficult. Very difficult. But very, very lucky I stuck. I went, brought a mare for father to run in the International at Laurel, called Italian Mist. And anyway, she was cantering on the track anyway. She went slower and she couldn't run. So the owner, who was a lady called Mrs. Whitney Tippett, she said to me, I said, she can't run. And she said, well, I'll tell you what you do. I want you to do. I live in Longstanding, down in Virginia, and I'd like you to come down and bring her down. She gave me 17 horses, all back from the track trained by Charlie Whittingham. And she had some sort of a difference with Charlie Whittingham, but most of them, anyway, when we looked at them, they all had, I'd say, there was a couple of 2-year-olds or yearlings at the time. They were the soundest ones. The others were all problem. 17 of them were riding for Shannon anyway, and I was very, very lucky with them.
Talk about timing or luck.
Yeah, very lucky. It was the luckiest thing in the world, bringing the mare and meeting her. But she was here for 5 or 6 years. And
Did you train out of Milletta Lodge?
I bought Milletta for her.
Milletta.
I bought
and
Milletta.
then that's where your brother Paddy trained out of
he
then?
he bought it after me.
Right, okay.
No, Con Collins bought it after. I bought it off Con Collins.
Right.
And then when Mrs. Tippett sold it, Patrick bought it.
Okay. So that's where you've moved, say, from the 10 broken down stables to Milletta Lodge with 17 horses.
No, I didn't. What do you call it? I started to build a few boxes down here while I was working for Father. When I got sort of some of them built, I had 2 fellas that worked on the gallops there. They used to come down every day. They were good at what a block layer, one had block layer, and so we put the boxes up and started off that way.
Friarstown, where you are now today.
Yeah.
What kind of success did you have in the early years with those, say, 17 horses? They would
I should have flew for me. I had a very, very good 2-year-old called Hulla Hull. He won at Phoenix Park and he won. I think he won. He was nearly the top-rated 2-year-old in the country, and we brought him to run at Ascot in the Windsor Castle, and he was odds on, and the track got washed out, and there was no racing, so he came back then, and she was getting a bit edgy at the time, so she took all the horses and sent them to Noel Morris in England.
Really?
Yeah, but I had got sort of good clientele in the interim, you know, so it was there.
So
she was a good leg up to me.
She just gave you the start and push to the quality, yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned your first winner was well backed. Back then, prize money wasn't great. Was it a case of trying to get a touch to...
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the same, like, fellas, I see fellas are brought in England for doing this and doing that. Sure, they're starving, basically, with the prize money. Like, it cost you, I've heard if you were sent a horse in a horse box, it's $150 a mile, $140 a mile. Like, I mean, say if you go 300 miles, it costs you 500 quid before you get there. You know.
So basically, in those days, you had to gamble to survive.
Of course it was. You had to. What do you call it? Owners like had to gamble to survive because there was no other way.
Yeah.
And there was a time there wasn't a lot of money in the country anyway.
There was no money in the country. Definitely not.
And you were very lucky, like a lot of trainers at the time here, to be supported by wealthy foreign owners.
I happened to be lucky to strike that woman, and that was it. If I hadn't, I trained for Davy Brennan, mostly publicans and farmers, you know.
Lord Ivy you trained for?
He was a great man. He was great for me. He was very good. He died, unfortunately, when he was 54. And I always could go to Keeneland and buy 5 or 6 horses for him and just send him the bill and he'd pay.
Of course, he was the Guinness family.
Oh, he's boss of Guinness.
He was the boss of Guinnesses, yeah.
Good man.
And dealing with them owners back in the day, how hard were they to manage? Anything really awkward? Or?
Well, no, he would come here on a Friday evening or Saturday evening, come down, I'll come down to see you, come in and he'd have a drink and go home, and his own driver and drive down, and good man.
And would he at any particular time, what kind of numbers would he have had with you?
Maybe 5 or 6 most. When Hampden on 8 or 9 yearlings every year, that was it. You wouldn't get any more.
Yeah.
And most you'd have for him was 15 or 16. But it was great. Like, I mean, you were guaranteed a check, like, coming in. Then you could take a chance and buy 1 or 2. Sort of, you got stuck with it. It wasn't too bad, you know.
So you've trained out of Milletta Lodge. Then where did you go, to Friarstown, or did you go to Rossmore
No,
first?
I bought Rossmore. When my father died, he left it to my sisters, and I bought it off them. And he he'd quite a few horses left. Ard Ross, I sold him. He won the jockey club for me, and he won the Savile Bag, and I sold him. Leicester rode him in the, he bought him off me, Leicester.
For Charles St. George?
Yeah, for himself.
And of course your dad passed away in 1980.
The 20th of June 1980. And Ard Ross only got beaten the Gold Cup that day, the day he died.
Did Nikolai win the Irish Guineas the year he died? That was your dad's last class.
I trained Nikolai.
Oh, you trained Nikolai?
Yeah, but under his name.
Under his name,
Yeah,
okay.
he hadn't seen him but he was very ill.
So you were basically training your own string, and you were training your dad's string as well?
That's right, yeah.
How long did that go on for?
Well, he only lived, 18 months like him after I took over the string. There was only 30 horses in it then, but they were all nice. There was Arctic Vale and Ard Ross and some very nice horses in it. There was Arctic Royale. She won the Guineas, and she won the Mile Lair. I won the first Mile Lair that was ever run.
Squibbs Curran, of course, rode Arctic Royale, didn't he?
Yeah, beat a filly that I bought called Blue Wind. Paddy trained her as a 2-year-old. After the year after Dad died, he trained her. He sold her. He bought into Newmarket, and he bought a filly by Hot Spark. She was no spark, but he bought her anyway, and got into financial trouble. So sold Arctic Royale to John Muldoon, Tommy Muldoon, and Philip Solomons, and she was a very good filly. And she ran in the Marcel Boussac, and Paddy wanted Christy Roach to ride her, and anyway, Muldoon and wanted Leicester to ride her. So anyway, Roach rode her, and anyway, the result wasn't as it should have been. And anyway, she went into the sales. There was a row over, and she went into the sales. And Vincent and Robert Sangster were underbidder, and Weld bought her for 136,000. And just before, Firestone said, "Oh, I'm not giving any more." And Dermot says, "I'll take a quarter share in her." So that's how he got her.
This was Blue Wind?
Blue Wind. And she won. I beat her a short head in the Guineas, and she won the Irish Oaks and the English Oaks.
Yes.
Leicester rode her in the English Oaks, did he?
Yeah.
Northern Treasure, he was your first 2,000 Guineas winner?
Yeah, he won the Guineas for Davy Brennan. And he was a good horse. I bought him off Sonia Rogers, I think in Newmarket for $3,000, which was plenty of money at the time. So Davy Brennan, and he sold a half share into a fella called Byrne. And he was second 3 or 4 times as a 2-year-old. And he just got chid with 9-7 in the bird catchers. And on my apprentice, a fellow called Pat Martin, who's an uncle of Brian Hughes.
Oh.
An uncle
Small
of Brian.
world.
Huh?
Small world.
Yeah, isn't it? An uncle of Brian Hughes. And he actually won the Irish Cesarewitch, Pat Martin, on Prominent King. He won the Cesarewitch on Prominent King. And Robbie Coonan won the Irish champion hurdle on it for me.
As did Frank Berry, didn't he? He
Frank.
won 2 Irish champion hurdles, didn't he? Not this Fran now, Fran's dad, Frank.
He rode him
Sure
in
did
the
wait now,
Triumph. Stop, I was trying to miss that. He rode him in the Triumph hurdle.
Did he win?
He was only third.
Go on, there's a story
I'm
behind
not
this.
saying any more.
Of course, you play golf with him every Monday anyway, so...
We don't discuss it, and we don't discuss horses. That's why we're good friends.
What's the best horse you ever trained?
Ard Ross. By a mile. So sold him because we had to sell him for money at the time. And I said to Pidget and St. George, I said, "This is not a Gold Cup horse." I said, "He's a 1.5 mile horse." And oh yeah, he won 2 World Cups. And when he was 6-year-old, they ran him in the arc and he got British short-haired. And he promised you could send him down 5 furlongs, 6 furlongs, but you had to give him a chance in the first furlong, and then he'd beat. You could run him 6 furlongs and he'd win. Very good horse.
How hard was it to lose him at the time? I know you had to sell him, but
It was very, very tough. But my brother, you see, owned half share in him. They wanted him. In actual fact, Christy Roach and my brother wanted to buy him for the Triumph Hurdle and cut him.
I thought Christy Rogers was a good judge.
You can print that. That's true. They wanted to buy him for the National Hunt Horse.
would he made a good hurdler?
He's some horse.
And you train plenty of good jumpers as well, I'm supposing.
Oh, I'd some good jumper horses over the years, yeah.
KTT, you must have got great pleasure out of KTT winning a
For the lads in the yard.
with the lads in the yard,
yeah.
and
I have
Brian Hughes riding it.
Yeah, Brian. We brought Brian over to ride it. Brian is a grand fella.
Chris Hayes and Declan McDonough, they were your 2 most recent jockeys.
McDonough was. McDonough's a very good rider. He doesn't get the credit for being the rider he is. He doesn't get the credit.
Very strong.
Strong rider, and what do you got? And knows his way.
Remember when he won in Rebelline? Rebelline was an underrated
That's right.
filly in the Tattersalls Gold Cup. Ever
Yeah.
thought you were pitching above yourself?
Yeah, oh, she won well, yeah. I think she beat, what do you call it, one of Hamptons. What was it?
Naif, no?
Naif. She beat Naif, yeah.
What was all the rage of these Australian jockeys be brought over year in, year out?
What I mean, half the fellas here couldn't do the weights.
Really?
They were, what,
That was the main reason, was it?
a lot of them couldn't do weights, you know. Like, most of them, like Ward was quite heavy. And Roach was heavy enough. You know, Roach was with the old man from when he was apprentice, and he rode them all, like, you know. There was no jocking them off, but there was, you know, and Nicky Brennan rode for me for years. Nicky was a good weight, like he could 8'2" or 8'3", you know. But basically, Paddy Matthews was a very good rider, but he had a little bit of a problem, you know. But a good fellow.
How good was Christy?
Christy was a very good rider, and very hard on horses. He wanted to find out how good they were before they went to the race.
Similar reply to Lester Piggott.
He was very good.
Your dad had Bill Williamson, Garney Bagour, Des Lake,
Yeah.
3 famous top jockeys of their generations riding for him.
Yeah, well, I had a very good jockey and a very good fella called Laurie Johnson. And I got him off Charlie Weld, Dermot's father. He came to me after he was with Buddy, Charlie Weld, and he went back, then he went to Singapore to ride for Garney Bagour.
I met Laurie Johnson in Macau, Singapore, along the way.
Lovely
yeah.
fella, lovely fella.
And what was the attraction for the Australian jockeys to come to Ireland back in those days?
Well, I mean, basically their season was closed. Like, I mean, their winter, a lot of them wouldn't be all the major races. Now, there's no, basically, the first, they're only starting the race there now, like coming up to the Melbourne Cup. All their stakes races are coming up. But there was a flat period there for 3 or 4 months. Yeah. So, basically, I see Huey Beaumont now has been in Hong Kong for the last 4 or 5 months. You know, but basically the reason he went there, I'd say, was there was nothing doing, you know, in Melbourne or Sydney.
And apart from the weight issue, were there better riders, more advanced riders, or at the time?
At the time, I think, what do you call it? You could say we'd no apprentice school and nobody to guide the guys, and you know, with the exception of Liam Ward and Mick Canaan came on after that, but basically apprentice school did what I'm very sorry to hear that they're in trouble. They did an awful lot of good for Irish racing, and it's one of the major things in the country. And I think, I don't know who to blame, but I think it's a shame that it's not continued. And somebody basically should do something about it. It's not right, because those guys, we have plenty of more talent in this country than most countries, and it all has to be done is honed. And with the apprentice school, they gave it a great chance. Young fellas went into stables then, and they knew a little bit, but at least they had discipline, you know. And I think at most games, if you don't have discipline, you have nothing.
You made a number of jockeys. How much pleasure did you get out to see the
Well, I
do
love to see them doing well. I get a great kick. I always watch Brian Hughes, he rode a winner today. I watched him riding, and I'm very pleased when they ride a winner. That Sam James, he was apprenticed to me, he was very good. And he's a very good rider, and he's riding very well for Carl Burke at the moment.
Charlie Swan was an apprentice with you.
Charlie Swan was apprentice, he's a very good apprentice. I got him came from his father.
Donald Swan.
Yeah, Donald. Donald, good man.
Kieran Fallon.
Kieran, yeah, Kieran. And also the guy that's back from Hong Kong now riding in England.
Neil Callan.
Neil Callan.
Neil Callan, yeah.
Yeah, he was with me.
When Kieran Fallon came to you, could he ride then, or did you teach him
Never
from
saw a
scratch?
horse. Never saw a horse. No, he was dead raw. Come straight to me. And good rider, good rider.
He was obviously very natural, was he? From more
Oh
go.
yeah, he good athlete. Good athlete. Good athlete.
And from day one, did he pick it up quickly, or was it taken?
He was always what do you call it? And it was one thing about him. He was a good worker, and he'd always be in work. That I couldn't say the same for Neil Callan.
Were you surprised how well Kieran did later on in his career in England?
I was delighted for him. I think he went to Jimmy Fitzgerald, and he did well with Jimmy. But what do you call it? He was always well able. I'd give him a couple of rides in horse races, and he was well able to ride, and brave as a lion. But he didn't like work in those days, anyway.
Dave Parnell.
He was a very, very good rider, very good. But he didn't serve his apprentice with me now, but he came to me from Wells, and he was doing very well. Unfortunately, I think he was coming from a birthday party. Anyway, he got killed over near Bob Griffin's there. I couldn't believe it.
Just down past Wells and Roswell, that bad.
Bad bend there, and he ran in. He was coming to work, and we were waiting out with some fella. He said, Jackie won't be coming, he said.
That was tragic, wasn't it? He was only a young man at the...
She was only 23, I think.
Yeah.
Terrible.
He was in the mould of Mick Canaan, both him.
No, but there was nothing between them. Everybody said that he was better than Canaan.
And Mick Canaan would always say that too, wouldn't he, Fran? For years as well, that Dave Parnell was my biggest fear.
He was very good, very good. And a nice fella. Yeah. I knew his father well, old Buster. He only died last year, I think.
That's right. But he had ridden for you, Buster Parnell?
He did. He was with my father for a year or two.
Was he?
Yeah, yeah.
You had a couple of Australian jockeys as well. Wayne Harris, Rodney Griffiths.
Wayne Harris was a good fella. Rodney had a betting problem. He used to bet on the virtual racing. And he could have a double or a treble. A dog in Harold's Cross, a horse at the Phoenix Park, and a virtual one on the bookmakers. But a good, lovely guy. But he was a victim. He wrote a book, actually.
Did he?
Yeah, wrote a book.
Brad Brever, he won the Phoenix Stakes.
He won the Phoenix Stakes. It was
the
run at the Phoenix Park.
Yeah.
Or no, it wasn't run at the Phoenix Park. It was run at Leopardstown, yeah.
1991 or something, no?
I wouldn't have the date now just on my head, but anyway, it was at Leopardstown, and he won on them.
How did you find these Australian jockeys? You had no videos to see them, you had people on the ground?
I had a lot of mates. See, when I was in Australia, I had a lot of guys that worked with me, you know. And one fella called Lionel Robin, and his pal, fella called Singer. They went and they won the world buck jumping champ in Madison Square Garden. 2 Aussies. And they worked with me at Dalton's. And they were hardy fellas now, I can tell you. 2 tough boys.
They give you a heads up, and this jockey's a good lad, get him over to you for the season.
They used to come and visit over the years. They'd come, like, they'd leave the job and I think one of them, I think Lionel Robin went to live in Hawaii or someplace. The other fellow, I don't know where he went. He was mad on motorbikes. I was on a motorbike with Streeter one night, and we were driving down the tram tracks, you know, and ran off the tram tracks into a, what do you call it, in through a window, and it was a dry cleaning place, and there were Germans, a girl called Hermine Tarvac, and she wound up marrying a fellow called Stan Cassidy through the Inks induction. We had landed a bike in the middle of the close.
Into the window.
Yeah.
Is that after a couple of pints or not? Or?
No, there was no drinking in those days. no drinking in those days. No. You know, got on those tracks that the trams are on, and you were riding a bike and you're doing a motorbike and you're doing 60 or 70 miles an hour, and you hit a bumper of any description. Anyway, we're lucky we weren't killed.
Another jockey that wouldn't be familiar to many of us, he rode a classic winner for the Ledger and Connor Pass in the early 70s, Paul Jarman.
Paul Jarman, yeah, he was a very, very nice fella, and he was from Queensland, and he'd rather go fishing than go to the races. And I started him off fishing, and he got hooked on the fishing, and he went back anyway, retired from what he got, and he bought a fishing boat, a commercial fishing boat, and that's what he does for a living now. And I went back to Melbourne in '96 with Oscar Schindler to run the Melbourne Cup, and he came down and we spent a couple of days together with a hell of a fella.
Was he with you for long, Paul Jarman?
Couple of years.
You mentioned Oscar Schindler. That was quite a journey with that horse.
Yeah, he was quite good. He'd be like Ollie Lahan, who was wild man, but anyway, I can't tell the story, but I'll tell it to you some other. But he was actually in Aidan O'Brien's, Oscar Schindler.
Was he?
He was. And how Lahan got him was he played golf, and he won 15,000 off John Magner, and I think the nomination was something like that at the time, and he gave him the nomination for the mare that Lahan had, and Oscar Schindler was the result, and he was in Aidan's, and he made a bit of a noise now, and anyway, I got him, and a fella called Louis Carroll, who died not so long ago too.
Yeah, Louis, yeah.
And Louis done a great job on him. He drove him for about 2 months and got him to wear himself. Because he was always sticking his head in the air, but he got him to wear himself.
And arch his neck and...
Arch his neck and and he wasn't as bad, he was good. But he took an awful lot of work, So we were very lucky to have a swimming pool up there. We'd give him a bit of work and let him go for a swim. He'd do 4 or 5 laps at the pool, home and work and swimming most days, but he put on, you couldn't keep the weight off him, and you couldn't keep him out of the pot.
He won the Ormond Stakes and the Hardwick Stakes before the first of his 2 Irish St. Ledgers.
Yeah, and then he should have won the Arc. He was third in the Arc, should have won.
To Helicio?
Helicio won, Helicio won, and what do you call it, Stout's horse beat him a short head for second place.
Did Cash ride him? Cash Smoothen ride him?
Cash rode him. He was last into the straight, and he went all over the place on him. Anyway.
He was fourth to Ponceleb as well, wasn't he? In another arc, the following
year. He was fourth the following year, yeah. But he should have won the first arc. That was his reel there. We gave them 20 lengths into the straight and got beat. But Helicio jumped off. Chris O'Reilly, Lady O'Reilly, who died not so long ago, she bred him, Helicio.
Why didn't Stephen Crane ride him? He was a stable jockey at the time. And Stephen Crane.
Stephen Crane, what he called it, he rode him two Ledger winners.
But why didn't he ride him in the Arcs?
The owner changed the jockeys like he changed his shirts.
When you look at his form, there is a lot of jockeys that beside him.
Mick and Ann was the only one that rode him twice, I think, and he won the Hardwick on him, and he won the Ormond on him, and he wouldn't leave him on him, Well, he said, what do you got, doing Rome as the Romans do. If you go to Rome, you have a Roman jockey. If you go to France, you have a French jockey. So.
And the name, of course, Oscar Schindler, the film had only come out at that time.
We had to write to, to Oscar Schindler's widow, who was in her 80s or 90s at the time, and got a lovely letter back off her, and she said she'd be delighted to have her horse named after her husband, which was nice. I didn't get the letter now. Lahan got it, we never got it. I'd love to have had it, you know.
Yeah, that would be lovely to have, wouldn't it?
And to win 2 Irish Ledgers, your home track.
Oh yeah, it was good. He was a very good horse, and the day he won the Hardwick, at that meeting, I was only after starting with Lady O'Reilly, and Verglass won the Coventry.
Willie Supple rode him.
Willie Supple rode him, yeah, and I bought him off Sheikh Mohammed for 26 grand, and I think he had 5 runners in it. In the Coventry. Amazing game. I don't think he ever forgave me.
Kevin, another one, Pidget. You nearly won the Phillies Triple Crown of Pidget, didn't you, back in the early 70s?
She won the Guineas, and she was unlucky not to win the Oaks. Mr. Ox's, I think Darren McCarg was it? Fella was riding for Oxroad or anyway, and I said to him, make sure when you're coming down the hill, because she knows where that hill is and she might head for home. And she went halfway home and still finished 3rd. Anyway, she won the Ledger that year. She won the Guineas and the Ledger.
Did T.P. Burns won the
T.P.
Ledger
won
on
yeah, he was left-handed. And what do you call it? The fella that rode her in the Oaks was right-handed. And T.P. mostly used his left hand. He couldn't use his right hand. That's why he rode him.
Some of your owners, Sheikh Hamdan.
Oh, he was a great man for me.
How did yourself and Sheikh Hamdan, where did you meet? How did the relationship become about?
I tell you, I had a good friend called Tom Jones, trained in England, and there was a woman called Mrs. Betty Veriker, had horses in training with my father, and when they'd get high in the handicap, or what do you call it, father used to recommend Tom Jones to take them, you know, and he had horses for Hamdan, and Hamdan decided to have a couple of horses in training in Ireland because he had Darrenstown stud, and Tom Jones says, I know the man for you. So basically through Tom Jones I got him.
You had some brilliant days at Sheikh Hamdan.
Ah, unbelievable. He was very good to me, good man. Went out there and he was treat you the best in Dubai early on. Very good. And Sheikh Mohammed, fair play, he was very good as well.
Did you train for Sheikh Mohammed?
No.
Right.
No, Mick Osborne was his manager, and the Osbornes and I never really got on.
Okay.
You know, even though my uncle or my father's brother rode the winner of the National for Old Joe, their grandfather.
Okay.
Called Alice Baythorne.
How big a change when Sheikh Mohammed and Sheikh Hamdan came into racing? How big a change was that for you going to sales, the way they boosted everything up?
Yeah, it was, what do you call it, he mostly bought what he wanted himself, and what do you call it, and usually he was fairly right, you know, and the couple of very good horses I got on, he bred them himself, really. I was very unlucky not to win the Derby for him with Mad Moon. He was probably unlucky. We had good days. We won the Guineas for him, and good days with what do you got? Several good horses for him.
Mustameet was a real
He was a
standout
right
there.
little horse, yeah, a good horse. I think he won 10. He got disqualified once, but he won 10. Good horse. He
Really
was.
solid Group 3 performer, Group 2
Yeah,
performer,
Group
wasn't
2, yeah. Same as that horse Well had.
Famous name.
Famous name.
Yeah.
You know, they just couldn't get their head in front in a Group 1. They weren't good enough, you know.
Art had a course, winning the
Yeah,
Guineas.
he won the Guineas, yeah. He was quite a good horse. He's doing well as stud now. And better than a lot of them thought he'd do. These big fellas with covering 200 and 300 horses, they don't like them. They don't like those horses that don't cover as many and get as many winners. But he is a very good sir if he gets a chance. And he's very, very reasonable. I think he's standing for about $5,000 at the minute.
Moving on to some of your other owners. Lady Chris O'Reilly.
She was lovely person, very good to me. And her husband, I knew him years back, Tony O'Reilly, when he was playing rugby. Lovely guy, very smart. And I had some great owners. Michael Sheehan, John A. Wood, Dr. Kiley, who'd be John Kiley's, I think he's an uncle to John Kiley.
Okay.
Very
What
good.
what good horses did you train for those people? Can you remember?
Oh, mostly be ordinary horses. Ordinary horses. But they didn't mind, they loved the bet,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Lady O'Reilly, Rebelline winning the Tattersall's Gold
Rebelline,
Cup.
she won the Tattersall's Gold Cup. Just got beaten the Guineas with the Menti Carta for her. And Verlas was a very good horse for her. You know, listen, when you have an owner and you have 2 or 3 good horses for them, it's like a football team. You know, if there's 3 good players on it, it's the most. There won't be 15 good players or 11 good players. You know. And there's another thing too. If you don't have the cartridges, you can't fire the gun.
It's very true.
You know, so you have to have the ammo. And if you don't have the ammo, and if you have enough money to buy the ammo, you have a better chance than the fella that can't buy it.
And you never had big budgets to buy horse at the yearling sales, didn't you not?
Never got what you got. The dearest horse you get probably from Sheikh Hamdan. Then what you got? And they were all bought by the agents and that, you know.
And how many would you have had every season for Sheikh Hamdan?
You'd always get maybe 8 or 9 2-year-olds, you know. And then if you had 2 or 3 or 4, 5 3-year-olds, you know. But basically, if they weren't up to scratch, most of them went to the sales.
Yeah.
Which is common, but otherwise they start collecting up around you, you know.
Handassa, you trained her, who's
Yeah, the
now
dam of what do you got? I trained her. She was a very good mare. She was by Dubawi.
Mustadef's dam.
Yeah.
And Nazif as well, both
Yeah.
Group 1 winners
That's right.
this year.
Yeah. And they, usually Sheikh Hamdan send them to you. What do you got? If you trained it, what do you got? But the system changed a bit, you know.
And Sheikh Hamdan and yourself, you had a great relationship as well off the track. You both had shared interests, fishing, hunting.
Oh, he loved to shoot. They loved the fishing. Loved shooting. But he'd always come here. And he'd come in and sit down. He'd stay an hour and chat away and what do you? And he was good. Good man.
You had a great relationship with Sheikh Hamdan, didn't you?
He was great. And he'd ring you. Where are you? I'm in the pub. And he'd laugh.
And we thought it was very noticeable at the sales. You'd see Sheikh Hamdan and yourself, and both of you'd have your arms around each other, and God only knows how funny stories you were telling him, but he always had a laugh at you,
He
didn't
loved the crack. He loved the crack. But that's the story.
Dunbine Express, he was another very smart
Johnny
horse.
Connaughton, yeah. A good horse. He did very well when he went to Hong Kong, became a champion.
Evening Verse, smart filly of Mrs. Whitehead's, a grey filly that you done well with too, stakes winner also.
Oh yeah, she was a good
Evening Time, sorry.
evening time.
Love soft ground.
Choose me.
Choose me. The dam, all good dams.
In 2009, you trained the National Stakes and My Glare Double with 2 very cheaply bought horses by unfashionable sires, Kingsford the National Stakes and Termagant in the My Glare Stakes.
That's right, yeah. We bought one for 36 and the other for 38 in the workman sale. Or the
Sportsman
sale, yeah.
Yeah.
Sportsman sale.
Termagant was by Powers Court.
Yeah.
And the other horse, Kingsford, was by War Chant, no?
War Chant, that's right. Yeah, War Chant, yeah. Out of a good family. He was out of a good family, but a good-looking horse. And I bought him for, what do you call it, Norman Ormston. And Sheikh Mohammed bought him, gave us a lot of money for him. Anyway, those were...
Termagant was owned by a great pal of yours as well, George Vasicek.
Ah, yeah, poor old George got drowned. A good man. And we had La Colina for him, won the She won the
Matron Stakes.
Matron Stakes. Yeah, I bought her off a good mate of mine, Frank Barry, who was a great fella, good judge.
What did you look for when you went to the yearling sales? Because you always bought a lovely, and still do, buy an eye-catching individual.
Good mover. Look, something that looks like an athlete. Yeah. And now, if you walk like me, I wouldn't sell well.
The two of us will be alongside you as well. We no bid.
See, now these fellas walk on pigeon-toed, you wouldn't be buying too many of them.
Do you put much emphasis on stallions, pedigrees, or is it all about the budget?
A lot is to do with the budget, but like if you can see a bit of black type in what you got, but mostly racehorses are bred to be racehorses, and they're out. You see that horse that won the national stakes yesterday? His dam, Minding, she was very good, and her dam, Lily Langtry, she was very good. So, I mean, it's like everything else. They're bred to be good. You know, if you have one that bred to be, a show jumper.
They normally are.
You don't have much chance running against those.
And you always punch above your weight with that type of horse taking on the big stables.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, you can only get them as fit at what you got, and most of those horses that are ordinary bred, you can't drill them like like well-bred horses. They don't last too long. And if you notice these, I noticed before we conclude, I saw an animal beat me in Ballinrobe, and it ran 17 times from the time it won its previous race, and it won off 65 at the Cor as a 2-year-old. And it ran 17 times, and we worked out conservatively what it cost the man to win a race, and it went back to 65, and it won a short head. How I know it, because it beat one of mine off 54, right? And the 54 now was off 76, and it's had 8 runs to get back. It went to 69, and it ran 4th in an ordinary handicap, and it went back to 73. Now it's 70 again, and if anybody thinks that I'm going to run it 17 times before it'll win 5 grand, they're not in the right parish.
The economics of it doesn't add up, Kevin.
I mean, it cost that man 32 grand to get it back on a mark where it had a chance and wins a short. It hasn't been seen since. He probably brought it home and making a pet out of it.
The facilities on the Curragh.
Absolutely the best anywhere.
How have they changed since when you first started training?
Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is, it's changed because there's no horses here. And we're very, very lucky to have Joseph O'Brien and Aidan O'Brien to come in and work their horses there and pay fees to keep it going. Other than that, like, I mean, for the amount of horses there, we couldn't pay the fees. It's beyond the budget. So I don't know whether anybody else knows that John Ox used to have a big string of horses. I had a good string of horses. Desi Hughes had a good string of horses. Miko had a good string of horses. And there was a lot of horses, you know. And I mean, they were able to punch their weight and pay their way. But if those people didn't come in and work their horses here, and by the way, Tony Mullins,
Willie
Mullins comes in, he works his horse. If they didn't come in and put money in the pot, the grass would be growing out over the hedges.
We've got some good up-and-coming trainers on the Curragh, though. That shows there's a bit of life coming again.
It might be a bit of life, but listen, if you don't, as I said to you, if you don't, you have the gun, but if you don't have the cartridges, you can't. So you have to have owners.
Yeah.
And how are you going to get owners if there's no incentive for them to come here?
Yeah.
No incentive whatsoever.
And all the facilities have been all upgraded
Well,
over the last couple of years.
Mrs. Boucher there, she's done marvellous work subsidising the gallops. And what do you get? Everybody should be down on their knees thanking her. You know.
Eva Hafner, of course, of my
That's what I mean, yes.
Yeah.
That she's Mrs. Boucher, I think. Isn't she?
You go from training back when you first started training, just grass, gallops, ploughs, then to the all-weathers and everything. How big a change was that for you?
Like, I mean, years ago, we had old ploughed gallops, and you'd have to put a bit of paper in them to try and keep your horse going. And basically, if you wanted to gallop, you had to get a harrow and go to Portmarnock or give them a bit of work in Portmarnock. And the old man had the place up in Wicklow there. But other than that, you wouldn't be able to compete. Now, everybody's able to compete. They all have the facilities, and there's no excuse for bad trainers, only bad horses.
That's a very good point.
You know. Everybody has all equal now, except the ones that can afford to buy the best bullets.
And Kevin, you have, as we said, 7 decades. You're training winners. You've kept on moving with the times and evolving. That must give you some pride.
I never think about it. All I went up from day to day, and that's what you have. Like, the one thing about training races, it gets you out of bed in the morning, and if you have a real horse, you get out an hour earlier.
And you were always an early riser, because you've always been the earliest starter on the cur, haven't you?
Oh yeah, what do you got? Well, Clive Britton at Newmarket didn't go to bed, but I do.
But you're very competitive.
Oh yeah.
Who is your biggest rivalries down through the years with all the different generations of trainers? Was there one that really stood out with you?
Well, I think Weld over the years, like, I mean, he's done very well, and he's done everything. And one time we used to be able to compete, and I didn't have as many horses as him, but I used to be able to nearly match as many winners he had. But I always found him that, I think, like, pound for pound, he's done a great job. You know, he's had Ravi Tiku and got horses like all round, had some great owners, universal owners, which were great for him. But he did a very good job for them.
Yeah.
You know, Bert Firestone was very good for him. He'd Akazawa, good man. You know, he'd some very good owners, but he's had some very good horses and some very well bred horses.
And Walter Hafner, of course, the
I had him
founder
first.
of My Glare. Did
I
you
had
train
him
his
first.
first Group 1 winner, Ariel?
I trained his first group winner ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had him, and long story.
We're in no rush.
Long story.
How would you like your legacy to be remembered as?
Fella that told mostly the truth.
How did you get the nickname Spot?
I don't know.
Go on.
Come on.
I don't know, actually. I don't know.
You've been affectionately known as Spot for
Years.
Years.
You wouldn't be slow to miss someone else's horse going off the gallop if it worked well.
That's what the boys got. The Spot saw that. Jimmy Coogan, I think. Jimmy had a runner at the Phoenix Park, and it got left 100 yards anyway. And anyway, it ran on. I think about to finish fourth. And I saw it in a mallet the following week. And anyway, I had a runner anyway, and I saw it in anyway. And I went down and I had 1,400 to 1, you see. And Jimmy, heard that I had the 1,400 to 1. Jimmy got 12 to 1, and his owner got 12 to 1. But I only backed it because I saw it at the Phoenix Park, and it won half the track. But anyway, your man said, I think Coogan called me Spot.
Kevin, it's been an absolute pleasure. You're a legend of Irish racing, and what an unbelievable career. 7 decades from beginning training, you're still training winners.
I enjoyed every bit of it. And I must congratulate what he got, Aidan O'Brien. He trained 4,000 winners yesterday. I've trained over 2,000 winners. And I didn't have the same ammunition, but well done to him.
How good a trainer is Aidan?
The best. He's so dedicated. He does nothing else. Like, I mean, he does it night, down in the morning. He's so dedicated. Like, I mean, it's unbelievable. He's a great workhorse.
Do you think he's the best trainer that you've ever competed against?
He's the best horses anyway. So, as the best footballers kick the best balls. You know, he's a good trainer. So is Henry Settle, a good trainer. Trained Frankwell. So is John Gosling. But they don't win with horses that are rated 70 and 80 group races. As simple as that. If you don't have the ammunition, you can't win the war.
Any regrets in your training career?
One regret, that I won't live long enough to enjoy it.